You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each week our team discusses news and events from this past week, as well as preview the week ahead, covering Mexico-based promotions and top independents, along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are also available on all major podcast streaming platforms, including iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbase, Speaker, Google Play, and more. And don't forget, this show is also featured through our partners at thechairshot.com. My name is Miranda Morales, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. And let's bring in the rest of the team. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Miranda?
I am doing well, very, very well. And of course, well, we can't do this show without the third member of this trio, and that's who? Who? It is the one and only Brendan Barr.
Hey, how we doing?
Very good, Brendan. How's it going with you?
Oh, I'm excited. This has been a great week.
Yes, I totally get it. So much news to cover, so many things happening. It is a busy fall, super busy fall, and man, just when you think you know what to expect, things keep on happening.
Things change, yeah.
Yes, things change. And we'll definitely get into that on this week's episode because lots of surprises this week in the world of wrestling. Yes. With that, I do want to start off briefly talking about the PWI Women's 150. As of recording today's episode, we have gotten at least the top 10 of the PWI Women's 150, at least, provided to the general public. The actual full 150 list is now available for all of you PWI subscribers, and, anyone who has access to it. But
I do $5 to buy the digital copy.
I do want to point out some of the notable names in the top 10. Of course, because we are the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, some of our bigger, more lucha, oriented names. At number 3, we do have your current AAA Reina de Reinas champion and Impact Knockout Women's Champion, Deonna Purrazzo. At number 3, we have number 5, Thunder Rosa. At number 8, Io Shirai. And rounding off the top 10, Raquel Gonzalez.
Yeah!
So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this, of course, and, number 1 being Bianca Belair, which I think, did catch some people by surprise. But as far as the overall top 10, a real, big mix of, wrestlers from all over the world, really, because I know some names from Stardom was also on there as well, which is, not necessarily very well known or with U.S. audiences, but a really good presence on the top 10 list. But going back to, kind of my original question about, what are your thoughts on these names specifically related to Lucha Libre, Lucha adjacent on this list?
Well, yeah, I'm real quick on this. First off, I wanted to echo your point. I saw that they definitely were trying for a lot more variety. The fact that Bianca Belair, who was not in the top 10, is now at number 1 shows they're really looking at the overall mix of things. As far as Lucha stuff, I'm going to let Dusty lead the way on that because I did jump right in. Go ahead, Dusty.
Yeah, no, I was mostly really pleased with Thunder Rosa's ranking. Her being number 5, Britt Baker number 4. It was their feud with each other that got them that ranking. And obviously having the title gives Britt Baker the edge. But if Thunder Rosa can be number 5 this year with no title, imagine what she can do next year. That's such a sign of promise for her and such a quickly rising star for her. I mean, think about where she was when the pandemic started now. She really, I'm real pleased for her and pleased for the trajectory of this for her because she really earned it with her work throughout the pandemic. It speaks for itself.
Speaking of promise, my girl Raquel cracking the top 10.
That was incredible, too.
Yes. That, too. I mean, when you think of 2020 was really Raquel's year. From the beginning of the year at NXT TakeOver Portland through the end. I mean, really, that is an incredible scene of growth for her and a complete 180.
Yeah, and I mean, she's earned every step of it, so I wasn't shocked, but I was super happy to see that, top 10 out of 150 women is a huge, huge deal.
Yeah. And as far as, the highest ranking lucha adjacent wrestler on this with Deonna Purrazzo, I know winning the AAA Reina de Reinas championship on top of, her lengthy reign as Knockouts champion definitely added that fuel. I mean, she has been one of the most dominant women in all of pro wrestling, still competing regularly on the independent scene, crossing over to the NWA and really anywhere that she can. But, I mean, truly when you think of her reign and her impact in women's wrestling, no pun intended, I mean, she has really done wonders for being a non-WWE wrestler. And if anything, already being, going through that system and not finding the level of success that she's been able to have an impact. I mean, she has literally gone through everyone in the Knockouts division, every opponent, including the surprise of Thunder Rosa, at Slammiversary. I mean, it all kind of winds in together. So I'm also very happy for Deonna Purrazzo's really high ranking in this. Io Shirai at number 8. She was the predecessor to Raquel Gonzalez in the NXT women's division, but also now, as a NXT women's tag champion and really someone who has been a pillar of that division now for over a year. I mean, even just this week on NXT, they were talking about how, she headlined last year's Halloween Havoc, or one of the headlines there. And I mean, just to see the work that she's done in the past year.
I just real quick want to remind people why Io Shirai is being talked about here, because you don't necessarily look at her and her style and think she's Lucha Libre. She did spend time in Mexico. She also did that infamous ninja episode on Lucha Underground. She legit has worked Lucha and it is a very important part of her history.
Yeah.
Mexico. Yeah.
Well, and even some of her moves, I'll talk a little bit about her match, this week in NXT, but regularly is a high flyer, incorporates, moonsaults, 619s, in her, kind of regular repertoire.
Yeah. I also, sorry, I didn't, if you were going to keep going, I didn't.
No. I didn't mean to interrupt yours.
I had the point earlier that Sasha Banks always refers to her history with growing up admiring Eddie Guerrero, which is something that is not. It's important to note that wrestlers like Sasha Banks now are growing up being influenced by Rey Mysterio's and Eddie Guerrero's, and Lucha's influence is traveling that way too. Yeah. So. Not directly Lucha adjacent because she had a pretty traditional American education and her style is very American South wrestling. She still throws the frog splash and the Three Amigos in whenever she can. So it's, and it's always nice to see that influence still seeping through.
Yeah. And as far as the evaluation period, because this was something I was curious about, the evaluation period ran from October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. So when you think about too, where people rank in this and all of that, again, I don't have the full list, but, I think just these, within the top 10 is a very interesting sign of, what they evaluated, what they looked at. And it does also make sense when you look at that evaluation period, why Bianca Belair was number one, as far as, winning the Rumble, headlining, night one of WrestleMania, a very continuance, dominance and presence on the SmackDown women's roster, very big milestones.
Yeah. And you can say the same thing like you did with Raquel. Like in that evaluation period, she was on fire. She was
absolutely
even when she wasn't in the title picture, she was in the main event picture every week. So, how do you avoid her in the force that she is?
Yeah.
This was also the first time since 2014 one of the 4 horsewomen of NXT hadn't been in the top 5 of the list.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal when we got like Deonna Purrazzo and Thunder Rosa in the top 5. You know, I mean, it
knocking
shows
those
how
4
things are. Yeah.
And this was the year that they expanded from 100 to 150.
Yeah. Like I said, it really looks to me like they put more of an eye on having, which is why I'm really curious to see what the rest of the list looks like, on having a more diverse array of talent being considered. Like a lot of the time, the PWI list is a couple of the super indie promotions and then the big ones on television. And that's, but they clearly put more effort into broadening where they're looking for this. And it shows in this top 10. Traditionally they're not great on having a lot of Lucha Libre representation. There are some people who have strong opinions as to, where Lucha Libre kind of stands in the hierarchy of things, but, I look forward to seeing, I think we'll probably swing back around and talk about it once we've had a chance to digest the issue, for the rest of the 150.
Yes. Good points. Well, with that detour, you know what that means. We're heading back straight to the road, back to shows with Brendan.
Detour, road. I see what you did there.
I'm full of puns.
So, for once, I'm actually, for once in a while here, in a decent while, I'm going to talk about what Mexico City is doing. They announced they're moving into the Green Health Code. This means they're going to start easing up restrictions. Outdoor shows will now be allowed to be at full capacity. You can have, outdoor or indoor spaces like bars and nightclubs at 50%. Obviously with face masks, everybody wear your face mask, stay safe. Lucha-masks.com. So
he's got new masks too at lucha-masks.com.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new Tinta Joker, there's a new Phoenix.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't trying to go for that big of a derail yet. We're going to have opportunity to talk about that. But so Mexico City is trying to pretend like things are moving towards normal. Outdoor shows being at full capacity means that we might see more outdoor venues being used, for AAA shows in particular, since they mix up their venues. That won't change. It won't affect CMLL very much other than, and I'll get to this, that some shows are getting up to 75% capacity at Arena Mexico. So, we're getting there. But again, to the earlier sidetrack, wear your mask, kids. Actually, I said I was going to get to it, but right there, CMLL had a press conference. They're going to be up at 70% for upcoming shows. They're going to start with the Day of the Dead show, and it's probably going to move forward with that. They're definitely, though, you're going to see a more full and more robust crowd at that Day of the Dead show, which is good because they always add to the atmosphere of that show. And then moving away from scary COVID news, Mass Republic has announced a partnership with Future House Publishing and the Munoz Dynasty to create a series of stories centered around Dralistico, Dragon Lee, and Roosh that are going to be bilingually published. I didn't get any confirmation whether these are just going to be all word and with light illustrations, or if they're going to be comic books. But either way, I'm kind of excited. It's Mass Republic's been big on trying to bring back the kind of legacy of luchadors and pop culture, and being like almost like superhero like figures was a huge part of that. So, now we might have to do it a little differently, but I like that this is based around the Munoz family, so there's lots of different kinds of characters you can have. I'm sure Bestia will be in there as well, but they did specifically mention the brothers, Dralistico, Dragon Lee, and Roosh. And then my last one is more good news. The Santino brothers started advertising for their first show, Saturday, November 27th. So Santino Brothers Academy in California. We talked a while ago that they were back in classes. Now they're running shows. And the first match that I saw announced, it was Bad Boy Tito against Slice Boogie.
Yes.
So I knew Miranda would be excited about that.
Yes, I'm definitely fangirling over Tito versus Slice, because that's just Haas fight. That's the equivalent of a Latino Haas fight right there.
Yeah, that's two Latino Haas's just going at it, and if you're sitting in the front row of that, you probably are gonna need to practice getting out of the way, because a big slab of meat's gonna come flying.
They got no time for this shit. That's exactly what's happened. They got no time for your shit.
So I'm excited. Congratulations on getting back. Santino Bros school is a big part of the West Coast lucha scene, and those two in a match alone is probably worth the price of admission. So keep your eyes open on that if you're in the area. Think about going. I'm gonna try and figure out a way to get results from them, because I want to cover that. But that's my road back to shows. I'm going to slip on over to the Indie Roundup now. I'm only covering a few things here. We did have Defy showing up in Los Angeles last week, as we talked about at the very end of the show. They did have 3 lucha related matches here. They had Titus Alexander and Matt. I cut off Matt's last name against La Rebellion. Consisting of Mecha Wolf and Damien 666. This was kind of chaotic and brawly from everything I've heard, which, makes me happy. I didn't get the results on that. I don't know how I managed to miss that. La Rebellion came out on top on that one. Didn't put that in, but I'm 99% sure that's what happened. You also had Super Panda and Adriel Noctis and Jordan Oasis in a 3-way match. Super Panda came out on top on that. Again, I will remind people that Jordan Oasis, highly lucha trained from up here. He's down in the Vegas area, so also always worth keeping your eye on when you're in the area. And then the one that I know Miranda had her eyes on, we had Viva Van and Sandra Moon. And unsurprisingly to me, seeing as the name of the show was Hellbent, Viva Van did win this match. But I've heard nothing but good things about it. They went on super late in the card. Everybody seemed to be super excited for the match. Congratulations to Viva Van for a big win and on a big platform.
Yes.
We did interview her here. She did talk a little bit about being excited about returning to the LA area. If you haven't heard that yet, go check that out too. All in all, Defy had a successful event. They did also have La Rebellion signing books over at Republic of Lucha, books and anything else you chose to bring in. So great weekend for Defy and Lucha Libre in the Los Angeles area. IWRG in their Mountain of Matches was they did a night that was themed around Squid Games. So they had a main event on
Interesting.
the 17th, right?
Can they claim to be the first promotion to capitalize on that?
They're the first one I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Which, as Lucha Blog mentioned over on his, normally Lucha is way behind the times. Like, we're the last ones to get these pop culture references into our show. So them being the first, kind of cool. So yeah, on Sunday the 17th, it's up on their YouTube channel, I believe by now. They had a number of matches that were themed around Squid Games. The main event being a cage match with Hijo del Pirata Morgan, Giant Orion from the Canada shows they were bringing down before. Maximo, Lolita, Diosa Quetzal, Hijo de la Brige, Halloween Jr., Villano 5 Jr., Caballero de Plata, Supernova, and Cerebra Negro. The concept behind this is that the wrestlers will get 5,000 pesos for each wrestler that is eliminated. The match will go on until wrestlers agree to stop or one wrestler remains. And nobody knew who was going to be in this match until they came out. So Hijo de Pirata Morgan wound up on top on this. I haven't seen how this played out. I could also be lying when I say a cage. I thought it was a cage, but I'm not seeing that in the recap here. So, yeah, so I mean, interesting match concept. Interesting that it's based on, like, apparently they all had Squid Games references in their costuming when they came out. So worth checking out. I haven't, like I said, I haven't gotten a chance to fully check it out, but I totally want to go check that match in particular out. But that's the 10/17 show on IWRG on their YouTube channel. Also on YouTube, Lucha Libre Boom had a card this week, which you can see the whole card, or you can tune in like I did for the main event, which was Averno versus Mystico. It's so good to have the old school Mystico and Averno in a match. It felt natural, like they'd never stopped feuding with each other. Masks were torn, chairs were thrown, beer was grabbed, and all the usual things. Absolutely worth checking out if you are a fan of that more Texas kind of roughhouse mixed with a little bit of high flying, because Averno and Mystico can still fly. Mystico did come out on top with La Mystica, as he should. The good guys need to win once in a while. But that's a great match. And that's my indie roundup for this week. I'm going to once again point out, in addition to me traveling to places like PCW Ultra this weekend, I'm always taking submissions for coverage. So, I know in the past we've had, Coastal Championship Wrestling and, an Idaho promotion whose name I'm going to get wrong. I apologize.
Well, I know we've covered different. Yeah, I was gonna say we covered, out here on the West Coast, Phoenix Championship Wrestling, Future Stars of Wrestling, Coastal Championship based out of Florida, I believe. So, we've covered a lot, of promotions, already through this.
Indeed. No, what I was getting at is Coastal Championship and a couple of the others did specific submissions. So, yes. I would like to always have the submissions. We try and get as much of this on the air. That's why I don't read all of the IWRG results, because they do 4 shows a week, but I want to save room for you guys. So, give us a line. We'll give out our socials later, but always, if you're a wrestler, if you're a promoter, if you're a fan and you want us to talk about your favorite or promotion or the one that's paying you this week, let us know and we will, we'll take care of you. But that's my indie roundup for the week.
Great. Thank you, Brendan, for both the Road Back to Shows and the indie roundup. Up next, you know what time it is. We're going to kick it to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha Central.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Mass, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's Wrestle Boss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the cheese made from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Mask Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
And as always, a big thank you to Denise Salcedo letting you know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network. So to start off this week's round of news, we're going to start with AAA. Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, well, the big news coming out of AAA this week was Hijo del Vikingo will challenge Kenny Omega for the AAA Mega Campeon Championship at Triple Mania Regia. It's officially Triple Mania Regia on December the 4th. The show itself is allegedly going to start at 6 p.m. Central Time, but if you've ever watched AAA, you know that timing is approximate at best. It'll probably start around 6:40. But, yeah, seriously though, so around 6:40. But so much that's cool going on here. Also in early time, shows they're going to try to draw in a little bit of a younger audience, I feel, or a wider audience. I'll touch on that later. They had a press conference to announce all of this. Vikingo was on stage, and he wasn't aware he was being announced as Kenny's opponent. And they let him find out on stage. It was a really emotional moment. So cool. It was impossible not to be swayed by his emotion and just feel invested in his emotional investment in the man. You know, like we shared that watching it. I thought that was a genius move on AAA's part. Kenny has publicly said that he really wants to wrestle Vikingo. Like that was his AAA dream match. And rumor had been going around that Kenny had been wanting to drop the title to Vikingo because he saw him as like not if the guy, but a next future top guy. And he felt like, you know, that maybe AAA wasn't given enough shine to Vikingo. Vikingo kind of felt the same way and stayed home for a little while during the pandemic. There's a big thing, but everything.
He did have a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wanted his paternity leave. Like,
Yes.
and that's fair to ask.
It's a very modern thing to
Especially
do.
during the pandemic. At that point, there were no vaccines. I mean, it was kind of admirable, honestly, especially when he had to stand up to everybody to do it. But now everything's back on track with Vikingo and AAA. Who knows if he gets to win? He should. If there was ever a time for Kenny to drop the belt to somebody, it's right now. This is how you make Vikingo a star. I don't know how long AAA has him tied up under contract. If they get him for another couple of years and pull this trigger, they've got an international star on their hands. We'll touch on it later in the show, but we saw what Kenny Omega did with Rey Fenix in their match for the Omega Campeon Championship. Match of the year 2019. Great match. Did so much to bring so much attention to AAA. People that I, knew that watched wrestling and didn't watch only watched WWE or didn't watch AAA. Or sometimes people just on the street when they would see me in my Lucha Bros shirt would occasionally mention, oh yeah, Rey Fenix and Kenny Omega. Like they had seen the match online. And so this has that opportunity to bring people in. I don't know what's going on with the lawsuit. It feels like AAA is just trying to wait them out. I don't know if that tactic's going to work, but the momentum they've got is so hot right now. They should do everything they can to cash in on an American showing for this, because people will want to see this match. I'm telling you now, it's going to be a match of the year contender, if not the match of the year. I'll touch on it a little more here in a second. The other match announced so far was Cain Velasquez, Pagano, and Psycho Clown versus Luchador Sorpresa, Rey Escorpion, and Black Taurus. Big AAA shows lately have had 7 to 9 matches on the card, so I'm expecting 5 to 6 more matches, including a Marvel Lucha Libre match. Remember I mentioned that early start time? There's no way there won't be a Marvel Lucha Libre match that close to Christmas and the holiday season with the early start time. They're going to announce those, I feel, in the next 2 to 5 weeks. AAA has been happy to promote their recent shows by announcing the card well in advance. And if they're going to attempt to sell tickets and make this show happen in front of a big crowd, then they're going to have to reinforce the idea that this is a big show. Yeah. And it's going to have important, big, high-stakes matches. And as we kind of mentioned before, not just kind of, but the Vikingo match should be one of those high-stakes matches.
Right.
The press conference was a great step towards that. It made it feel important. You saw the importance of it to Vikingo, but AAA still has a lot of work to do if they want us, the general public, especially the international public, to see this match as a huge deal. And it absolutely should be a huge deal. But AAA has a problem building big matches and building fan investment in those matches.
Lucha has a problem.
Yeah,
Lucha
I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, the build-up to the match isn't always there. The match itself is fairly solid, but the build-up to it is not always, there.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what we've got. I think that I think that it's very possible this could be the best singles match ever in AAA history. Like what we're getting ready to see. I think it could be, a match that people look back on for a very, very long time. These two guys, Lucha Blog touched on this. It's impossible to mess this up. Like, these two guys are so good, no matter what you let them do, it's going to be incredible. I mean, really incredible. Kenny Omega is one of the best in the world now, regardless of your feelings about him or his place in his booking. His actual in-ring work is one of the best in the world. And Vikingo might be the best hidden secret in all of wrestling right now. Like, Conan's been trying to tell everybody, but the general public isn't super aware of Vikingo. And so they could easily put on, like, the surprise best match that's ever happened in AAA. Maybe the best match that's ever happened in Mexico. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. A lot of people, you'd say something like that, they'd be like, it's hyperbole, you're trying to hype up the match. But with Kenny and Vikingo, it really feels like they're capable of a big match like that. At least with the trios match, I don't know who the surprise luchador will be. It does not feel as fresh and as exciting. Cain Velasquez coming back is a very big deal, but it's just kind of a shuffling of the match he was in before. So I think that actually shows, too, that AAA understands what they've got with Omega Vikingo. and that it's really going to be a big deal and treated like a big deal. At least that's my opinion and my hope.
Yeah.
They also announced, Darian Roldan says that AAA is planning a huge anniversary event next year on May 15th, 2022. That's 30 years to the day of the first ever AAA show. May 15th is also on a Sunday next year, so you can have a big afternoon WrestleMania style, big match. Maybe the biggest card they've ever had. Things are looking up for AAA right now. I don't know that their prospects have been this good. And I've been watching AAA for about 20 years now. Ooh, more than that now. 25 years now. And it feels like this is maybe not the hottest they've ever been, but the chance they've had to make it to the next step. Like, I don't know that they've ever felt closer. And this Lucha Libre FMV, the Full Media Ventures lawsuit between the Lucha Underground stakeholders and AAA, they have got to figure something out. It is going to completely derail anything they've got.
So not completely. I do need
not
to,
completely, yeah. But I mean,
they have this deal with AEW going on there, and they seem to be leveraging it pretty well. It's what I've been trying to sneak in.
Yes, yeah. Go ahead. Don't mention that because that's important to this too.
Yeah, so they because Kenny Omega's involved, they can very easily get this match put out in America under the AEW auspices. And to your point about them waiting it out, that legally speaking, from everything I know from my business degree, that's what they need to do in their position. Unfortunately, as to your point, the momentum they've got says that they can't do that, so they have to do these weird things.
It's this weird confluence of necessity versus momentum. And what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the more cash advantageous decision? Do you wait it out and keep your money, or do you try to pay them off and make money on this? I mean, legitimately, I feel like this is something you could sell tickets to in a movie theater. And people, are kind of doing that now.
Battle.
Well, I mean, obviously they can't right now, but it's that level of quality. And so if AAA could make that step, I think that they could be, easily on, the largest international brand in America. It would be so much easier than it is for New Japan coming across the ocean. And great for us Lucha Libre fans. So hopefully we'll see some of that. For all the AAA news, anything that comes out between the time you hear this podcast and the time you hear the next one, check out luchacentral.com. Pep Carrera will have all the AAA news on there, and he will have everything else Lucha Libre on there, because it's your place for all things Lucha Libre.
Well, this creates kind of an interesting segue. I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but this week in AEW, of course, we got the scheduling changes, with baseball, but also a really big swerve. Just a swerve.
Oh,
swerve the hell out of us.
And so we mentioned it last week, happening again this week. By the time you hear this, it may have already happened. Dynamite has moved to Saturdays. It makes our schedule for the show a little odd with the recording schedule, because we're off when we're normally not off a week. We'll catch back up next week. But also, before I forget, we had Rampage. We'll have the Dynamite for the main discussion, but Rampage was recorded last week. A fan of the show was there, sent me some information. Friend of mine who also listens to the show said that they saw Andrade versus Pac 2. That was the big spoiler. By the time the show drops, you'll know this happened, so it's not spoiling much.
Yes.
They said it was one of the best matches of the year, and the best match that they had ever seen in person. Like, they had never been in person to a match of that caliber. Said it was incredible. Pac wins.
Boo.
So, yeah, I don't know if we're going to go for the trilogy. We'll see. I asked for no details on that. I mean, I wanted to know who won, but I didn't want to know how, so I could enjoy it.
So you can enjoy the match,
Yeah. And after the match, the lights go out. Malachi Black appears. He attacks Pac. Cody comes out to make the save, and then he cuts a promo and says that he will never turn heel. He's babyface until he dies because he loves the energy from the crowd too much, which is, I don't know. It feels a little heel to me. So, whatever. But there's Cody.
Yeah.
And now we get to Dynamite. So this is really the discussion this week. The masked team. Andrade announced a masked team to take on Lucha Bros for the AAA World Tag Team titles. We were all prepared. Lots of hypothesizing, especially after Heroes Immortales when the Lee brothers showed up. Everybody thought we might get to see Dragon Lee and Dralistico and AEW. But when they got there, they had these green suits on. The suits looked great. Everything was done right. But under the masks, it was FTR.
Yeah.
And so so much. We'll touch on bullet points and then we'll discuss. So, FTR are good enough on their own, they don't need the masks. That was not for me.
Yep.
But everything they did was right. They had Iron Mike Woody make the masks. They looked great. The boots were Eddie Guerrero style. They had the flames up the boots, 2 different Eddie Guerrero style boots. The suits were fantastic. Everything was done just right. But the bait and switch with us being told we were getting a masked team, and with WWE we absolutely would have expected something like this because that's what they do. But AEW has kind of conditioned us to expect the best, and why not just announce FTR? Andrade's involvement. Why is he involved? The FTR part of the Pinnacle. The whole thing is just, oh boy, I don't know.
It's again back to being a weird, convoluted, too many people are allowed to influence the storyline kind of deal here because you didn't
just overbooked.
You didn't need FTR under the mask. You didn't need this weird thing with Andrade aligning with the Pinnacle for one night only. Which they even gave us a follow-up angle later where they show Andrade and MJF meeting in a stairwell of all things. And MJF went out of his way to say this is only for tonight. So that felt like they had to cover up the fact, we want to make sure the fans know that Andrade is not part of the Pinnacle. So why do this angle in the first place if you have to waste 2 more minutes later to make sure fans know Andrade is not part of the Pinnacle? It did nothing to forward Andrade at all, so why involve him?
I mean, they put it
so much.
Dusty, you made a good point as far as the level of detail that they went into creating the gear and setting this angle up to the point where you could have just said a surprise tag team, because that actually would have left the door even wider open. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they just really did that so that fans would not assume it was FTR, but just saying a mystery tag team, or just that you're not going to know who your opponents are until they get into the ring. It just seems there was a lot of effort put in to make it for really nothing. And the fact that you also mentioned, that MJF and Andrade meeting to specifically outline that this partnership is for one night only. And, it sets things up for maybe a long-term feud with, FTR versus the Lucha Bros. And going back to what you said, I mean, if we are going to talk about the positives of this, it does allow the AAA tag team titles to have more U.S. mainstream visibility. Absolutely. But that is because you had to put it on a U.S. team, just like now you have your, mega champion and, on U.S. television, your Reina de Reinas champion on U.S. television. So I do understand the model of it, but I feel like the way they went about it was a little ridiculous. They put a lot of effort and overbooked something that didn't need to get to this level.
Absolutely. As we said off the air, FTR versus the Lucha Bros would have been enough for me to buy in.
That's all it takes.
I have a ton of respect for FTR's ability. They, they will sell themselves publicly as not being a Lucha team because people in the States think Lucha is all about flips and high flying, but they're about locks and brawling. So they're very Texas style. It would have been a fantastic match just on that ground alone. And I felt that actually detracted from my enjoyment of this match, which was kind of on my tag team dream matches for this year.
Yeah.
So,
And it's also a big accomplishment for FTR now to be, literally they have swept the game of tag team wrestling. You know, they have won almost every tag team championship there is to win, which is a huge accomplishment for them. But to go about it in this way makes it, super rudo, which we commend. However, don't get us wrong, especially Dusty, Dusty is the Rudo king, always will appreciate Rudo's style. However, it was just super convoluted and overbooked.
Yeah. No, I thought, I had to ask myself that. I had to step back and ask myself that. Like, am I angry about this because I just got worked by a really amazing swerve? And then I looked at it and went, no, this is just overbooked.
Well,
That's
I have
fine.
a kayfabe theory on it all. Penta and Phoenix, they were prepared for a lucha team. Perhaps even one of the teams from Heroes and Mortales. They were not prepared for a ground-based brawler match like with FTR. They prepared for a lucha match. So that, along with the head games that FTR played by dressing up and playing along, played into Andrade's plans and cost the Lucha Bros the tag team titles. FTR got them. It wasn't so much about FTR as, for whatever reason, Andrade just wanted to take the titles away from the Lucha Bros to show he could.
And that also makes it a very interesting question mark about what happens now with Andrade, especially,
exactly.
if, do we see more of a multi-man warfare where you do have, Death Triangle versus Andrade versus FTR? But I thought that partnership was only one time only, or, it just makes it, that's where it seems like it could go. But is that the direction it really is going to go in? Or are they going to keep those feuds separated for the time being? I don't know.
Well, maybe FTR's, kind of hitched their wagon to Andrade. He got them some tag titles when Pinnacle couldn't. That's a pretty effective thing for a leader to do.
And I don't think the Pinnacle is even really active right now, just kind of like how, the Inner Circle is kind of in another feud, but I could also see the Pinnacle maybe kind of doing their own separate thing, which at this point I think would be fine too.
I saw those 5 masked men attacking somebody backstage.
I guess it's very much why, and you go to it like, when you think of this from a cultural and lucha fanatic standpoint, you essentially have a traditional American team hiding under masks, very good looking and very well put together gear to win the AAA tag team titles. Now, this would be something I could obviously see happening in AAA though. So it's not like the storyline itself is offensive, but I think the way that you get there is a little bit, I don't know. I guess the first initial reaction is a little, iffy because of,
to swing it back around, this could turn into an incredibly positive thing depending on how they do it. If this is all part of a big story that evolves over the next several weeks and, leads to other things, then we could all be eating our words. But,
and I hope that's true.
I have less and less faith that AEW is doing that, because it always feels like what happens is they just we know this for a fact, that they just tell the wrestlers the finish and they work out all the details, right? So that means that you've got all of these creative minds trying to come up with things and nobody telling them, maybe let's dial that back a bit, or do a program that involves all of these things. So it's a lot of the time it just turns into kind of a muddy mess. However, I will point out, back to my point in the previous segment, we could see FTR Triple Mania Regia.
I think we will. I don't see how they cannot come at this point.
Especially
with them trying to put on a big show for Regia, Mexico City being green again, as you mentioned. Like, there's a lot going into this, and honestly, FTR versus Lucha Bros in Mexico City is a hot ticket. Like, it makes me wish I could be there.
And again, it'll be interesting to see if they experiment with AEW distributing that pay-per-view somehow. I mean, how cool would it be If they just put up parts of it on their YouTube channel or made it their own little mini pay-per-view or any of that sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah. And we also have to mention, somebody who was very vocally a big fan of this was Vicky Guerrero.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, and she was on Twitter. She really was a big fan of this match, big fan of FTR winning. She obviously highlighted, like I mentioned, that they had the Eddie Guerrero style boots. But also, that these were the same titles that Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr once held. They were AAA tag team champions as well. Almost said AEW, but they were not. They were AAA tag team champions. And so it kind of shows the history and lineage in all of this. And if there's anybody that cares about the history and doing things right and honoring the history of wrestling and especially tag team wrestling, it's FTR. We've seen that.
Yeah.
They really have a lot of veneration for Bret Hart because of the Hart Foundation, tag team wrestling, everything that they did. And so I think that if out of every tag team in AEW they could have chosen, the team that would show it the most respect and do the most work to make sure that it got over and the titles get over as much as anything else would be FTR.
I do have to point out on your tag team veneration thing, a thing that I really love is their new entrance music is a blending of the Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express musics. So
that actually makes a lot of sense.
And that's
actually pretty cool.
Yeah, like that's 100%.
Well, now I'm not mad at them anymore. That's pretty cool. That's very cool. But I do think it goes back to what we were saying. What they do with the follow up next is going to be key. It's a very big swerve. So to their credit, a huge surprise. And it does tie into elements of two different stories. But, again, AEW, for what they put on together in big matches, sometimes storyline wise doesn't make a lot of sense. They overbook. It is WCW Nitro type of booking.
100%.
And I think fans tend to let AEW get away with it because the matches themselves are amazing. What they do in the ring is amazing. But it also, at the end of the day, depends on what kind of wrestling fan you are and what matters more to you. If you are just more concentrated with what's happening in the ring, the storyline buildup doesn't quite matter. And if you're vice versa, more of a storyline driven person, they could do great things in the ring, but you're not drawn to what they're doing because the storyline isn't matching up for you. So,
you could have such a superior product if you just balance those a little more. When you're building a sandwich, you don't add extra bread to the sandwich. Yes. You don't add too much meat or it'll fall apart, right?
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
So good. And I'm hungry now, so thank you. But also, absolutely right. You are preaching to the choir here, Running Bar. 100%. 100%.
I know you guys are behind me on this, but I want to get these out into the universe. Yeah.
Yes. Very much agree.
Yeah. I just agree with everything. And a lot of times not AAA for sure. AEW can, sometimes something doesn't make sense and then the story makes sense. Like you're just seeing the first piece. Mm-hmm. But hopefully that's where we're at right now. Great match. Should have been the marquee. I feel like more people would have tuned in if they'd known it was FTR.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it's going. It's just a very interesting choice. Well, this Saturday again, Dynamite moves back to Wednesday next week. For all the AEW news and everything more, just like I mentioned at the end of the AAA segment, check out luchacentral.com. Pep's got everything up there. So all the updates and everything will be there. Anything you need to know going forward. Hopefully we'll have a lot of exciting Lucha news next week in AEW. It'll be great to see where this all goes. I'm excited to see where it all goes. I haven't been as excited about the tag titles in a while.
One way or another, we're going to have a lot of news next week, and it's going to be interesting. It's whether it's exciting or depressing is the only.
Very true. I appreciate that level of reality, Brendan. So we're going to shift gears a bit because we want to talk about an interview that we had earlier this week with just an amazing talent coming out of MLW, someone who has been on our radar for quite some time, literally as someone that we've seen, on MLW television for over the past year, and someone we've been very interested in talking to based out of his Lucha Libre style, but also lineage in Lucha Libre. Texas-raised product of training, not only from his family, but also the reality of Wrestling Academy and much, much more. Gino Medina. We had the honor of speaking with him earlier this week to talk about really everything related to his training and background to working in MLW, the current scene in MLW with the changes with Azteca Underground and Cesar Duran. Really his influences and style and being able to wrestle, some of the legends that he looked up to. Before we share this clip, guys, I just wanted to get your thoughts on how you felt and kind of some key points on that interview that we had with Gino Medina.
I really liked how far back into like his training, his past, his history, his family history. I mean, everything that he had going on led to him becoming who he is today. Like basically it was his legacy or his destiny to become a luchador. Like when you hear his story, you understand. But like this was what he was meant to do. And the pieces just fall into place for him his whole life. And it's incredible. I love that. Just one of those things that's meant to be, and you got to hear it right from the source.
Yeah, I mean, kind of around what Dusty's saying, I just really enjoyed his kind of, his reverence for his roots and his history and his kind of humbleness about where he's come from. He's only, what did he say?
25.
Like 25. He's only 25. Yeah. He's already teaching classes, but still like it's all going back to where he came from. He still talks about hearing Booker T's voice in his head and still wanting to honor his father and his father's legacy. Like, I mean, just the amount of passion for the business that came through in this interview was fantastic.
Yeah. Really the entire interview is, I wouldn't even say just a joy. I mean, it was a joy to participate in it, but the interview itself is just so much great information and knowledge from Gino Medina, even talking about the future of what is, up next for him. He has a really interesting perspective on the future, on everything that's happened over the past year of, as everything that you guys had mentioned on his lineage, on his training, in the roots. Such a great perspective and really valuable insight. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to share with you a little clip from our interview with Major League Wrestling's Gino Medina.
We've seen the facts out there that you had your first match at 6 years old, wrestling in Minnie's matchup. So can you just kind of share with us what it was like growing up in a Lucha Libre family, and also your experiences with wrestling at such a young age?
Yeah, ever since I can really remember, I've been like in a Lucha Libre locker room, I was probably like 2 or like maybe I was still a baby and I was already in the locker rooms. I had the likes of like Pimpinella and like a lot of people just like taking care of me when I was just a baby, that, and I would like sneak my way into the ring whenever we can. I don't know if you guys been to a Lucha Libre show, but all the little kids get in the ring.
They do.
And I was one of them. I was one of them, like in there, like trying to get on the second rope and trying to like balance myself and stuff, doing little suicide dives and whatnot. But yeah, I was part of that little like culture since I can remember. People ask me like, oh, like how long you been wrestling? How long you been on all this? But like, I basically grew up in wrestling. You know what I mean? So I never started wrestling. Like wrestling just is my life. So like I said, ever since I can remember, I've been in the locker room, marking out with all these luchadors, seeing them. I don't know, as a kid, as a 3-4-year-old, you see all these guys, all muscled up with masks and capes flying around and stuff, you kind of think like, superheroes are real, So
Right?
you see that
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, like, is this something that I can do, I can't be Spider-Man, but I can for sure be, El Santo, Rey Mysterio. So as a kid, I kind of saw it that way. I saw it that, this is something that I could do as well. And, of course, I wasn't really sure as a kid, like talking to my dad, like letting him know that it's something I want to do. But as I got older, I kind of like knew I had to do it, Sadly, my dad passed away when I was like 5 or 6. So he never got to see me wrestle or train me to wrestle and whatnot. But, I feel like when he passed away, I kind of took it upon myself to kind of continue his legacy in the Lucha Libre culture and then kind of just make my own legacy, as you see now. As you very generously introduced me, I'm carrying that legacy pretty well.
Yeah. As a second generation luchador, what do you think the biggest difference is between like your training and like you trained at Reality Wrestling with Booker T in Houston, but also you mentioned some lucha stuff. What are the differences between like the current training and like the lucha training that like your dad might have gone through with Mr. Lindsay in Monterey?
Oh, you guys did y'all's research, because I never heard that one before. I love it. I feel like Lucha Libre is a little bit more different because they're a lot more like fast paced. They're like running around the ring, jumping out over the ropes and whatnot. So it's a lot of cardio. It's a lot of cardio when it comes to Lucha
cardio.
Libre. Yeah, and I love it. I still do it myself. Like thankfully, I started at Reality Wrestling doing like American wrestling, but before that, I got trained Lucha Libre by one of my dad's friends here in Houston, which his name was El Monje Negro. And he trained me to basically just like, it's called tumbling, where it's just a bunch of rolls and, forward rolls, back rolls, all these type of rolls. And that's all I could do for like 2 years. He wouldn't let me do anything else. You just roll, cardio and roll. And then I see people now that that do come to Reality Wrestling, and they get tired by running for a minute, And now I'm like, come on, man, like you gotta like step it up,
You gotta try. That's
Come
what
on.
happens when I'm sure you've done it your entire life.
Yeah. But like I said, I do give them some slack because I know, it is hard. I remember my first day of like Lucha Libre training, I threw up. I was like 14, and I just threw up, because of course I did the little like mini stuff back when I was like younger, but like I got my actual training in like at 14. I started training over here, and it's pretty hard because like I said, American wrestling is a lot more like slower paced and a lot more like psychology that goes into it, perfecting the craft that comes with like everything, psychology wise, or being with Booker enforced that on us since the beginning, psychology, the structure, this and that. Lucha, you throw that out the window. And you just do a cool hurricanrana. You do a cool hurricanrana, suicide dive, throw them back in, do a crossbody, and you're good. But and I'm not like knocking either of those. I just feel like wrestling is like like music. You can't knock like rap because you like rock music, and you can't knock rock music because you like rap, It's just, it has different flavors of it, and just kind of decide what you like and what you want. And then for me, I love Lucha Libre, but to me, I knew that I want to make connections with people. I want to make connections with that crowd, and I knew if I wanted to do that, I had to do this side of that I'm doing now, and which is like the American pro wrestling of it. And I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy being able to do both. I'm 25 and I can have a match with like, I feel like anybody.
Yeah, literally anybody, because we ran down some of the names that you've wrestled already, and out of Reality of Wrestling, you've done a lot of those guys. You work great with a lot of people for sure.
Thank you.
I mean, go ahead.
Oh no, and then like I was gonna say, I've just been lucky to like wrestle a lot of the Lucha Libre legends that like taught me a lot. The likes of like Psycho Clown, El Santo, El Hijo del Santo. I wrestled El Hijo del Santo, and I just couldn't believe that. I remember being in the ring, like seeing him come out with his cape and everything. And it was just so like, just the legacy that he carries behind that. Like to me, I just couldn't like, comprehend everything that was going on. But with him and then like Dr. Wagner and stuff, it's just, I've been in the ring with Rey Mysterio, to me, all of that, I feel like learning experiences to what I'm like becoming as a wrestler.
So that was a clip from our interview with Gino Medina from Major League Wrestling and lots of other promotions all over the U.S. The man is everywhere. Make sure you stay tuned. The entire interview already is released on luchacentral.com. And of course, our partners at thechairshot.com. It is available through all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Podbay, Speaker. And just give it a listen. If you are not aware of Gino Medina, if maybe you haven't watched him in Major League Wrestling or aren't aware of his work throughout really the U.S., but primarily in the Texas wrestling scene, make sure you give it a listen. He's only 25 years old, and there's so much more to come from Gino Medina. And that, we're going to transition to this week's MLW, a pretty big show with Alpha Fusion. And we had two pretty big lucha adjacent or lucha libre matches. The first one was a Opera Cup qualifier match, Matt Cross versus Calvin Tankman. And this was really, a mix of styles, of course, of sizes. But also just, experience. Calvin Tankman hasn't been in the wrestling business nearly as long as Matt Cross, who's been all over the world. And those differences really helped make this match something to watch. Of course, Matt Cross, being the veteran, knew exactly how to approach this match with speed right away. He started off with a quick roll-up into a double stomp on Tankman, and then used that agility to help him out with the speed as well. A double kick through the middle ropes to the head of Tankman, actually a few times, and then a suicide dive to the outside. Getting back into the ring, Tankman charged at Matt Cross, but Cross did this really fun move he's been doing in MLW, and I don't know if I'm sure he's done it a lot before, but it's a cartwheel on the top rope down to the mat, but Tankman just caught him with a huge shove, push block, however you want to call it. It was like a football player just charging at you. Tankman took charge for a good portion of the match, but Matt Cross was able to gain some momentum back with a big elbow and a big kick to the face of Calvin Tankman. Matt Cross had a spring body cross and a double stomp to the back of Tankman, and sent him outside, again, utilizing some of that space outside, and trying to do some of that, more high-flying maneuvering. However, Calvin Tankman did catch Matt Cross into a powerbomb on the ring apron, and in which Calvin Tankman, strongly asserted, "Fuck that flippy shit." So, now you know where Calvin Tankman stands
honorary
on flippy
FTR.
shit. Yes, honorary, fuck that flippy shit, quote unquote, from Calvin Tankman himself. They had a big exchange of chops, Tankman with a mean spinning elbow, and then Tankman sent Matt Cross into the ropes with a counter really on Cross's neck almost, into a cutter, and he had an amazing shooting star press, missed, but landed on his feet. Tankman then came up with a pop-up elbow. That caused some kind of referee distraction, or Cross in the meantime kind of thought that had hit him right in the eye. That allowed Calvin Tankman to have a mean clothesline, and he ended up blasting Cross with a back elbow to the head and pinned him to advance in the Opera Cup. So if you are looking for a great match this week, Calvin Tankman versus Matt Cross is one to watch. Calvin Tankman does advance in the Opera Cup tournament. Also, we had the main event, Meet King Muertes versus Richard Holiday for the IWA Caribbean Championship. Now, this definitely had a lot of story going on. This match was actually set up at the end of last week's episode by Cesar Duran, who utilized, his power, to really for a few things. One, of course, as King Muertes is an ally, of Cesar Duran, not as blatant, but we know enough to know enough. Richard Holiday is somewhat of a product of Cesar Duran's wrath against Alicia Atout, who had her expose on Cesar Duran he was not a big fan of. He knows that Alicia and Richard have a ship of sorts, not a relationship, not a friendship, not quite enemies, not quite friends, but kind of did this as a way to kind of get back at Alicia for her expose. Before this match happened, though, too, Cesar Duran mentioned, Contra and at least kind of somewhat of a loose partnership or understanding with Contra, and that plays a role because prior to the match, Richard Holiday was attacked, and he got his head busted open. He ended up having to sign a waiver in order to compete in this match, but when he came out, you had two members of Contra's Death Squad out in the ring, keeping an eye out. And then also throughout the match, you had EJ Nanduka and Mass Kruger fight in the back area. Hammerstone finally got involved. And then same thing with Joseph for Fatu. Pretty much Contra versus, Team Hammerstone fighting it out in the back, which left Richard Holiday pretty open. In this match, though, I mean, you started off with shoving, but the majority of this was a fairly brutal brawl. With King Muertes taking a lot of the fight to Richard Holiday. As you know, Richard Holiday is a good wrestler, but not much of a brawler. And then you also had, Cesar Duran, making his point where he spilled champagne all over Richard Holiday's head, when he was outside of the ring. Holiday did end up being able to land a spine buster, to help swing some of the momentum back to him, but Mil Muertes came back with a big slam. And then ultimately with everything happening in the back and then the Sentai Death Squad members kind of moving closer to the ring, Akira Kwan from Contra came in to the distraction, ended up interfering in the match, but to the point where it didn't really matter because King Muertes was able to land his flatliner and pinned Holiday for the win to become the new IWA Caribbean champion. So with a lot of things going on between Contra and Team Hammerstone, it does seem now that maybe they have a somewhat alliance with Cesar Duran, and it looks like, anyone who aligns with Cesar Duran is going to benefit greatly. And you also have a new IWA Caribbean champion in King Muertes. So congratulations to the King and this. Of course, we have a War Chamber happening soon in November, just a few weeks away. So we're going to see these teams match up, and then we'll hopefully get more information on the card for War Chamber, as we continue to see just the changes and uprising in talent in MLW take center stage. Of course, the Opera Cup tournament will continue over the next few weeks as well. But that is this week in MLW. And, well, up next, you know it, you love it. It's that time of the week. It is This Week in Lucha Libre History with Dusty.
That's right. It's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in every day at luchacentral.com for This Day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera. He's got information, anniversaries, birthdays, matches of the days, videos, like notable events that happened that day, reviews, everything. So much that I can't even list. It's all about Lucha Libre, and it's all for free at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. This week we chose October the 19th, 2019, when Kenny Omega defeated Rey Fénix for the AAA Mega Campeon Championship at Heroes Inmortales 13. Omega and Fénix was set up by a confrontation between Kenny and Rey Fénix after the Triple Mania 27 Trios match between the Omega Young Bucks version of the Elite and Lucha Bros with Laredo Kid. And this match was probably the greatest singles match in AAA history. Like, it's just so good.
Up until the next one that's going to be happening,
up
right?
until this year. Yeah, I think that this year could beat it. I really do. But, I mean, this was so good. It was just a frantically paced match. It went 100 miles an hour in all the best ways. Like, I don't know how these guys did it. Their training and their, cardio work just must be insane. But in spite of the speed and the kind of relentlessness, it still had a beautiful psychology. There were allusions to things like Nightfall Batman with the Bane spot breaking Batman's back that were amazing. And it just really made Kenny and Rey Fenix feel like they were both the best two guys in the world and putting on the match of the year, which it was for 2019, in my opinion. And just a great match. Kenny Omega tried to set up the one-winged angel finisher that pretty much the entire match. He hit several running V-triggers throughout, but Phoenix would get off of Omega's shoulders every time he attempted the one-winged angel, so he could never seal the deal. Phoenix hit a monstrous Fire Thunder Driver, but hit a monstrous Fire Thunder Driver for a near fall in this match. It wasn't enough. It made my bones hurt to watch Kenny Omega take it. So I was shocked it wasn't enough, but it wasn't enough. Kenny eventually was able to hit the V-trigger, followed by the full one-winged angel for the win, and he got the AAA Mega Campeon Championship. Still the champion today. Ties into this thing with Vikingo coming up. Very exciting. Brendan, what did you think of this match?
Well, that is 100% why I had suggested that this was the one when I saw it in there, is that it ties into the fact that Kenny Omega is still the champion, and we're looking for the person who's going to dethrone him, and the level of excitement that you had for this match, that other people had for this match. Really, I think you're right. It's going to be met, if not exceeded, by the Vikingo match, because I think as good as Rey Fenix was in 2019, I think Vikingo is going to rise up to the challenge, and the fact that we aren't expecting that a lot of people aren't expecting that level of match means that he's going to get more into it when the crowd is behind him. I mean, there's not much that I can say about this match that you haven't covered. Like, it was all over the place, super fast energy, huge moves that just terrified me to watch. I was emotional watching it. It was one of the few times that I had my neighbors worried about me because I was shouting at the screen at the end of it. I did not agree with that finish whatsoever, but, I mean, just fantastic all over the place. And I still get that when I watch highlights of it. I still get a lot of that, like, energy that I have.
That adrenaline, that excitement is still there. Yeah, like, it's super prevalent every time I watch it too. It just, I remember exactly where I was at when I watched it, like everything. Like, it's, it's incredible.
Miranda, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's now hard because you guys already said a lot. That's why it's always hard to go last, especially on this week, because you both hit a lot of what, why we picked this match, especially once we heard about Vikingo Omega. This was the one that was giving very similar vibes. And it's almost, almost like it's a remake plus a sequel. I feel like what Vikingo and Omega will be. It's like the sequel, but it will be like well, not even a prequel, because it will be like a sequel but a remake of this match. And I think that one thing I do, I give a lot of shit to Kenny Omega, just because I can.
You and me
but
both.
Kenny Omega knows how to tell a story, and he knows lucha libre. It's a very apparent in just the very few seconds of the match with the way that he works with Rey Fenix, the way he understands a lot of those big acrobatic moves, the way that he knows how to tell a story. And I feel like that is something that with Kenny, I mean, he is truly a universal wrestler. He can wrestle any style, anywhere, and he can tell a story without saying a word. And that's an incredibly rare thing. I think with Phoenix, he's very much in his element in this, but for Kenny, I think it's something that is incredibly special, and a talent that really comes in very, very rarely,
Yes,
extremely
absolutely.
rarely. And so I think that being able to watch this and really seeing how Kenny moves in this match, and again, in accordance with Ray too, for me, it was really that opening sequence of them being able to kind of match tit for tat, and also even just that, dragging, arm on the outside of the ring, as far as just finding those little details where you don't necessarily have to do everything on 2 feet when you're outside of the ring. And so I thought there was just kind of some really interesting sequences and moments in the match where they were telling things in a very unique way. But if anyone wants to predict what the future will be like with Kenny versus Omega versus Vikingo, Hijo de Vikingo, this match is what I think a lot of us expect it to be, which is, again, like you said, very high caliber, one of the best matches in AAA more modern history. Well, that is it for this week in Lucha Libre history. Make sure you check out luchacentral.com for this day in Lucha Libre history. But wait, there is more. Brendan, can you let our listeners know what else they can find on luchacentral.com?
All right, let's do this. So if you're listening to this and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it's really time to do it. Luchacentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Spanish, find the best curated video content, and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. A place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards. Seen and read by top executives and all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And on top of all of this stuff, it's free. LuchaCentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Thank you, Brendan. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit of NXT, which was truly a mixed bag this week. And as I explain it, you'll know why. I think it's a mixed bag. Literally not even a bookend, because one was bad, one was good. Anyways, mixed bag. So first match we're going to talk about is Elektra Lopez versus Cora Jade. This match actually started with Legado del Fantasma out in the ring and Santos Escobar calling out Carmelo Hayes, pretty much saying that he was going to challenge him when the time was right, very much alluding to that. Elektra was going to get on the microphone, however, Cora Jade's music interrupted and they started with their match. I mean, Elektra was, the fairly aggressive, dominant one throughout the entirety of this match. But at the end, Cora Jade just was able to grab in that inside cradle, hold on for enough time to get a 3 count. Which is a surprise. I mean, it makes sense with Cora Jade. They're really pushing her as, a possible top, a rising babyface in the women's division. But, doing that at the expense of Elektra Lopez after, having Santos lose last week was a very odd decision. You could have had her face anybody to get that win. And also, riding high on Elektra's not only when she's had 2 wins, one of them being from BFAB, with, Hit Row. So it sends a very confusing message about the future of, Legado del Fantasma. Very, very odd. But I understand why they did it, but I don't know if Elektra was the right person to do that with. Up next, we had a match from each of the representatives that are going to be in the women's tag team match, triple threat match at Halloween Havoc. Io Shirai versus Persia Parada versus JC Jane, and a winner spins the wheel. So the winner of this match gets to spin the wheel in order to determine the stipulation of the triple threat match next week at Halloween Havoc. And we talked a little bit earlier on the show about Io Shirai and her, lucha influence and lucha training. That is pretty adamant in any of the matches that you see in NXT. Very early on in the match, she laid both Persia and JC Jane out of the ring with a moonsault, which is, something very typical. You'll see, her on that top turnbuckle, to the moonsault outside of the ring. Early on in the match, though, JC Jane was injured and was unable to continue, so the match ended up becoming a one-on-one between Io and Persia Pirotta, which was actually pretty, surprisingly good with Persia Pirotta. I had not seen very much of her, but it was, again, a size difference, Persia being a lot taller and even possibly stronger than Io, so she kind of threw her around and landed a beautiful power bomb, to get a 2 count. But Io in her eternal badassum fought back, beautiful drop kick. She got the 619. That's also one of her signature moves, and, locked in a crossface to try and get the submission win. But eventually was able to, hold on to Persia and get a German suplex, which also shows Io's incredibly strong. Even though we've seen her in a lot of acrobatic moves, her strength is not one to be messed with. And she ended up winning the match with the moonsault and was able to spin the wheel. The stipulation is a Stairway from Hell match, which probably means it's going to be a ladder match for the NXT Women's Tag Team titles next week at Halloween Havoc.
There better be demons. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. I don't even know what to think of this Halloween Havoc episode that we're going to get, you guys. I don't even know.
I don't even know. Step down.
Right? I'm just going to say that. I mean,
I am still being optimistic that it could hold the same core values as last year. So I want demons in my Stairway to Hell match. That's all I'm saying. Just demons.
So I want to call him L.A. Knight. I was going to call him by his previous name. L.A. Knight.
Yeah.
Won his match to officially become the host of Halloween Havoc. So take that for what you want. But I'm kind of with Dusty, and that's a downgrade. And that's my hill that I'm going to die on.
Let's be honest here. There's no upgrade for host. There's just not.
Oh, yeah.
Shotzi set the bar.
Shotzi was it,
way to exceed that. They should have just brought her back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The only way you go is laterally. There's no up from Shotzi, the Halloween enthusiast of last year.
Yeah.
So
I would have even been okay with Dexter Loomis. He kind of had some.
I would have been cool with that too.
That actually would have been.
He had a great match last year. Stood out as kind of the highlight of the show, aside from Shotzi, and so it would have fit perfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Anyways, so to sum up or to tie up the loose ends of this mixed bag of NXT Lucha content, Legado del Fantasma had a match against Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen, which I have to admit, I couldn't remember who was who for quite some time in the match. I had to watch that several times to figure out who was Briggs and who was Jensen. But this match actually started before the bell. Legado del Fantasma beat down Trey Baxter, who I believe is the boyfriend of Cora Jade, in order to make up for the fact that Cora beat Elektra. So there is some storyline in there. Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen got involved. That led to them coming out into kind of an impromptu match. So this was not advertised. Santos was outside of the ring, kind of doing what he does best, taking advantage of opportunities and seizing moments, which he did when the referee was distracted, and he rammed Briggs into the side of the ring. With that, Joaquin Wilde was able to take advantage of that and set up a baseball slide, in which Briggs was then slammed into the side of the announce table. Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza do this really well with the hot tags between them. And this is something that I think is very unique to them as a tag team. They're able to tag back and forth. They were able to keep Briggs in the corner to prevent him from getting to the other side. And Raul Mendoza had a really nice splash to the back of Briggs. But he only got a 2 count there. Eventually, who's the other guy? Jensen was able to make his way into the ring. But eventually, a distraction where I think Jensen took out, Santos Escobar with a hit. That was enough of a distraction for Joaquin and Raul to bring him back in and hit them with their finishing maneuver for the win. So I see where they needed the first match to happen for this match to happen, but also you're really going to put Legado in a feud with 2 guys
No, yeah. I think that the fact that Legado de Fantasma didn't get drafted to the main roster tells me everything I need to know about what they want to do with them in the future.
I think it was a big surprise to people that not that they drafted Hit Row, because I feel like they definitely have a place on, SmackDown, but I think that, Legado had been left behind and that they didn't have a big, over feud or a way to really close that feud out, more intensely as a faction. They're one of those few components now of the old NXT with NXT 2.0. And it almost seems like those components left over from the old NXT are really just there to put over the new NXT.
Yeah, that's what they're there to make the new NXT guys look better, which is not a good use of them. Like, why have these 3 hot lucha talents on the roster at all if all you're going to do is have the rest of your roster step over them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, again, adding Elektra was a way to kind of counterbalance what we saw with Hit Row, which made sense. But now now you don't really have a solid feud for them to really do. I thought Santos would be going after Carmelo Hayes. Again, right now that looks like that's Johnny Gargano. So what? It gets me worried, you guys. I'm a little worried.
I'm beyond worried. I've already kind of given up.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very positive right now.
No. And when you wonder, like, if they end up, because really the new purpose of 2.0 is to put over this new talent, this homegrown talent that they are going to try and move up to, Raw or SmackDown eventually. What does that mean for those that are still left in NXT?
Also, especially a fully actualized faction like Legado del Fantasma. They've done it. They've gotten gold. They've gotten multiple storylines. They've been on the top of the card.
They've gotten over.
If they didn't get called up during this time of transition, that it's just, again, it just tells me that they're probably not gonna. They're probably just gonna sit on them. So.
Well, it's better to be still on the roster than not, because I felt like you either got called up or you got fired. So.
Yeah, let's look at what the careers of other people in their position have done, though, when they got let go. So, imagine if we had Santos Escobar in any of the other big promotions in the U.S. right now. Like, any of them.
He would be the guy immediately in some place like Impact.
I was going to say, take the whole faction over to Impact. I swear, Dusty, I was going to say that. I swear to you, I was going to say that, but
that's the best place for them. Like, everybody's saying AEW, but Impact.
No, ROH too, because they would be a third lucha faction.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the dream booking. That's the dream booking.
See? I'm already doing better things in my fantasy than they're doing right now, which is why I'm just so depressed about what they're doing.
Well, that is this week in NXT. Don't forget to check out luchacentral.com for your NXT results. Up next, we have This Week in CMLL.
Oh, yeah. So we had a few things going on this week. For your bizarre CMLL trying to be hip cool kids news, CMLL, I'm going to give them the extra L, opened their official Discord this week. So you can now go on Discord to CMLL_official and talk with CMLL officials, wrestlers, and people, I suppose. I don't know what they're planning on doing with a Discord, but congratulations. In theory, it could be a very cool idea. I just, again, I have very little faith in the oldest still active wrestling federation in the entire world to use young people technology effectively. Just like the two don't seem to go together. And then, so we had a few matches, something I probably could have covered last week, but I didn't notice. We had a title change. We had Angel de Oro and Felino in a Mexican light heavyweight match. where Angel de Oro wound up winning the Mexican light heavyweight title. That was last Tuesday, and then, or the Tuesday prior, and then again on Tuesday, we had some fun things going on the show. They had the Torneo and Incredible de Amazons. It's a, Parejas incredible tournament. So one heel and one babyface, or one Rudo, one Technico in each of the matches. You had people like, you had teams of Dallas and Princesa Sugehit, Scotty and Tiffany, Uvia and Reina Isis, Avispa Dorado, Stephanie Vakir, Amapola and Metallica, and so on and so forth. I mean, that covered most of the matches, most of the pairings. They had 9 total matches, which had, Dallas and Princesa Sugehit winning the whole thing, which is incredibly unsurprising, but actually was kind of a fun series of matches to watch. Again, for those of you who know of my connection with Avispa, I was disappointed she went out so early, but that's, what do you do? She's the young American. She's not going to go over very much. So those are, I mean, that's what we've got there. We had I'm not going to go over the results of each one, but yeah, we had the Dallas and Princesa Sugehit. Congratulations on winning the Torneo in Incredible de la Amazons 2021. That's my CMLL news this week.
All right. Thank you very much for that CMLL news. Up next, we're going to go back to the world of WWE with, I have to look at the notes from last week, because literally in the notes is, if there is a God, and we'll talk about that in a second. Because apparently there is. So, breaking news, everyone. We've just proven that there is, because there's a mix of notes from last week and this week in this for us. But, of course we had Crown Jewel, that happened today, and more. So, Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, well, I'll get main event and 205 out of the way. Main event this week had Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo teaming to defeat Ricochet and John Morrison. I couldn't get it to load on Hulu. I don't know if it was an issue with the Crown Jewel tournament today. Something I couldn't get to load. We will cover that next week, so keep an eye out for that, but check out main event on Hulu in the meantime to check that out if you can. Also, just tonight, while we were actually doing the show, the news, at least came to me, that there would be a matchup with Amari Miller and Valentina Feroz versus Katrina Cortez and Yulisa Leon. Katrina is the masked luchadora from Chile that's been working in NXT. You've seen her around. She's going to be on 205 Live this week. And Yulisa is a brand new signing announced just on October the 21st. She's a second generation wrestler. She's a bodybuilder from Mexico. Her dad is the Monterrey wrestler Spider-Man, also known as Bronco, but well known as Spider-Man. Like, he's been around, within the last few years as Spider-Man. So she's second generation. Very cool. I'm going to check that out. I hope everybody else checks that out too. That's on 205 Live. But the main news we have is the Queen's Crown Tournament. And, like, this is where, like, the if there is a God plays into it. I kept saying, Zelina's gonna win. Zelina's gonna win.
He did. He called it.
Yeah, and on SmackDown, Zelina, she advanced to the tournament finals after she defeated Carmella in the semifinals. We talked about it last week, but Carmella had already done it all in the WWE. She got to the top of the card quite quickly at WWE, so this was the best choice. She didn't need the chance to shine. Zelina really did. It gives her the shine of making it to the top of the SmackDown Women's Tournament. She can claim to be the best women's wrestler on SmackDown now. I mean, it gives her a lot to do. It gave her the chance to prove how incredible we all know she is, but to a wider and more casual audience. And then when I typed this up, like, I believe Monday evening, Dewdrop had won, and I typed Zelina defeats Dewdrop if there is a god. And like Miranda mentioned, apparently there is, because we get to Riyadh and Zelina wins the Queen's Crown tournament. And it was amazing. Yeah, Zelina winning was amazing. The match was not so amazing. Thank you, Goldberg, because it was not the worst match on the card, but almost. And like the Goldberg, I loved Goldberg back in the day, but it just wasn't a good match. Piper or Dewdrop, she was not moving fast. A lot of it was literally Hulk Hogan style stuff, like trying to get the crowd to clap along, hulking up. I mean, it was an odd choice. I felt like the costumes were kind of a downgrade from the type of thing we'd seen before. They were literally just black bodysuits with t-shirts over them. The presentation, Denise Salcedo tweeted about this earlier today, but the entire Queen's Crown tournament was less than 20 minutes. Like the entirety of the entire Queen's Crown.
The final match was almost 6 minutes.
Yeah, the final match was as long as all of the first round matches combined.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, wild. But Zelina is such a perfect fit for this. She's got a great look, great talent. We've talked about this pretty much ever since the podcast started. Like, she's one of the best women's wrestlers around. Like, every time she gets into a WWE ring, she looks fantastic. She gets the chance to shine. Everything she does looks great. And now that she's getting recognition for that, kind of from the casual audience too, hopefully they saw this. She had the two best spots in the entire match. She had a stunning tornado DDT that was just fantastic, but she also hit a code red finisher that looked like $1 million. Like, she was literally, there are only two high spots, like high water marks in the match. She was, the offense on both of them, fantastic. She just never gets a chance to show that stuff off. Piper may not have been or Dewdrop, I apologize. Dewdrop may not have been the right platform. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the name Dewdrop personally, but it is what it is.
It was part of a weird storyline, so maybe they'll revert soon, but who knows?
Nah, they won't.
But
that's I got it, because it's stuck enough. But I think especially for the way that Zelina left and came back to the company, it does feel like I'm sure some validation for her, but also for the fans. And to give her, I think that I know one thing I had talked. I'm just gonna plug this in. Again, on the hashtag Miranda Show, on thechairshot.com, we talked about, yes, maybe the tournament itself was a little lackluster, but the way that you make up for it is who you have in your champion and who you have in this. And I think
just in the finals.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it last week, like, okay, so they're going to put Zelina in so that they can make somebody else go over, right? And we were talking about we were talking about Dewdrop last week. None of us were saying
Shayna,
yeah, that was a shock too, that Dewdrop, as soon as Dewdrop beat Shayna, I was like, Zelina's
gonna win. That's what I did too. But like I said that in our internal chat, that's the most exciting booking they've done for a long time with this division.
Yes. And going back, I was just saying, going back to Carmella winning the first ever women's Money in the Bank, I feel like not only was her reign because of the way that she carried herself in that briefcase, but, just the persona of it all really made that first reign something special. And so I absolutely see that happening with Zelina as, the winner of the Queen's Crown tournament. She has this, really regal, air about her now. She could absolutely incorporate this in storylines and also,
she can hold,
she can hold it over the whole roster.
Yeah.
Not just the women's roster, the whole roster. She's like, now I am the queen of SmackDown. I guarantee she's going to have something along that lines.
Well, and when they do it right, the King of the Ring tournament's amazing. Like, Harley Race, it's hard for me. I mean, a lot of times I picture him with that NWA title, but sometimes I picture him with the crown, like when I'm thinking about Harley Race. And especially Macho Man Randy Savage, his heel run is Macho King Randy Savage. Like, this can be the platform.
King Booker.
Yeah, King
King
Booker.
Booker, even Owen Hart,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the King of Hearts.
Yeah, this
Yes.
has really been a star maker for a ton of people. And so for Zelina to get that and have the ability she has, but not necessarily been able to capitalize upon it in WWE, like, such an exciting and special moment for her. I still expected something to happen, the ascension to the throne to turn into an angle, but it didn't. Like, the whole thing was just incredible. She deserves all the accolades and adulation for all this stuff. It's just so nice to see her get her due. Been a fan for a long time.
Yeah.
She was on Impact before, it's just incredible. She was too good to be just a manager, and now we're finally getting to see the fruits of that. Also related to the big Saudi Arabia Queen's Crown tournament, the crown jewel of Saudi Arabia, was Charlotte. There was a rumor that Charlotte might show up, and that ties into the Lucha thing because Andrade quickly put the rumors to rest by posting a photo of them and Gomez Palacio, proving that they were in Mexico and probably the best looking couple in wrestling. Like, they could easily give Seth and Becky a run for their money. Seth is no Andrade, my friends. And it's just, so anything to hype up Andrade. Yeah. So it was just cool to see, Andrade playing into Charlotte's thing and, anything to get Andrade over. He's, awesome. We love Andrade, so I hope that he gets tied up in all the WWE stuff and that they lay awake at night and cry themselves to sleep, wishing they'd never let Andrade go. So, for all the WWE news and more, check out luchacentral.com. Next week, we'll do main event 205 Live, have the results for that. We'll have whatever comes of Zelina winning the Queen of the Ring tournament. Oh, speaking of Saudi Arabia, I did have confirmation 2 hours ago the plane took off, so they weren't held hostage this year. I did check in on that.
They can't do that 2 years in a row. That would be.
Yeah.
That would be.
I appreciate you with the latest news on that, Dusty. That's
I do.
That's
appreciate
the real
the
news people wanted.
Yeah.
I do appreciate knowing that that's how it played out. Yeah. Jeez.
Your Lucha Libre news by air or by sea, by land, or by, I don't know what other forms, but of course by internet. So there you go. Yeah. We got you covered. Up next, we're going to be talking Impact Wrestling this Saturday, October 23rd. Bound for Glory will be coming at you from Sam's Town Live in Las Vegas, Nevada. One of the biggest pay-per-views of the year for Impact Wrestling, being headlined by Christian Cage, current Impact World Champion, versus the challenger Josh Alexander. For those Lucha Libre fans, a few things to keep note of. Your AAA Reina de Reinas champion, Diana Perazzo, will be facing Mickie James for the Impact Knockouts Championship. So, who knows, maybe the Reina de Reinas championship will be making an appearance at Bound for Glory. Who knows? But really the most kind of area of speculation for, say, that Forbidden Door comes in the Call Your Shot Gauntlet. Taking a step back, promotions for Bound for Glory, ever since the event was announced, did have flashes of logos of AEW, New Japan Wrestling, and AAA, alluding to the fact that, we may see that Forbidden Door continue in Impact Wrestling. According to the latest from Lucha Blog, it's not necessarily going to be anything that Impact fans haven't seen recently, with the AAA presence likely remaining from Black Taurus, who is currently part of Decay, and Laredo Kid, who has been wrestling recently with Impact. He's been on several matches for Before the Ring or Before the Impact BTI, and he was also part of a qualifying match for the X Division Championship tournament. So nobody new coming out of that, and it's likely that we're going to see them in the Call Your Shot Gauntlet, which is a gauntlet match in which the winner receives a trophy and a contract that they can invoke at any time within 1 year for a championship opportunity of their choosing. Last year's winner was Rhino, in which he ended up using that opportunity for the Impact Tag Team Championships for Violent by Design. This year, we do have a few people announced. We know who's number 1 and who is number 20. Chris Sabin is coming in at number 1, and W. Morrissey will be coming in at number 20. The rest of the 18 competitors, well, it will vary. We do have confirmation, though. Rich Swann will be in the match, Moose, and Brian Myers. The rest of it will be kind of up in the air. So that could be a place where we could see, some new faces, some surprising faces. However, don't expect too much out of that big draw for AAA. It looks like, if anything, it's going to be the existing talent that we've seen on television, which, is a little disappointing, but also the way marketing goes, I guess, I don't also see maybe any big things, on the AEW side as far as that, Forbidden Door, who knows? But New Japan, I know that is actually a fairly strong partnership, so that absolutely could have someone there as well. But it's just one of those things where you can set it up and really tease it, but it also doesn't surprise me that there hasn't been much more of a partnership between AAA and Impact at this point. Outside of the Reina de Reinas championship, and then Decay as far as Black Taurus. But again, his presence has really been more with Decay than anything else. And Laredo Kid, who I think has been a great addition to the roster, especially in the X division. And Bound for Glory is going to be happening live on pay-per-view. Other matches that have been announced, of course, the debut of The Inspiration, Cassie Lee and Jessica McKay. The 3-way match to determine the new X Division champion will be happening. Trey Miguel versus Steve Macklin versus El Phantasmo. And much, much more. The crowning of the new digital media champion is going to be happening. That and just a lot more on Bound for Glory. But make sure you stay tuned. Again, Saturday, October 23rd, live on pay-per-view. And to round things up this week, we have Ring of Honor with Brendan.
Yeah, it was just a real quick Ring of Honor. It was just TV this week. We had, for Lucha matches, we had LFI defending their tag team titles against SOS. This was, again, kind of pushing more towards the angle of Kenny King having a lot more beef with Shane Taylor Promotions rather than LFI's kind of ongoing feuds with Violence and the Pure division. So I don't know if that's because the Munoz family wasn't available for this series of tapings, or if they're just kind of moving away from focusing on the Munoz family until they know what contracts are signed. But yeah, we did have Dragon Lee and Kenny King successfully defending the tag team titles against SOS on TV this week. Next week, we're going to see more Lucha matches. I believe, if I read this right, we're going to see Bandito defending the title on next week's episode. So we should have a big episode next week.
Also, real quick, a plug for Women's Division Wednesday.
Yes.
It was just an encore, but still playing it again. Willow versus Angelina Love versus Miranda Alizé. Is reposted back up.
Still a great match, and now that you can get it on YouTube, you don't even have to worry about going over to the ROH app. So definitely check it out. It's worth a watch.
Yes. Speaking of worth the watch, Brendan, I know we wanted to take a quick minute at the end of the show to plug in something very close and personal to the Lucha Central family, and that is the upcoming episode of Dark Side of the Ring.
So it looks like by the time this show actually hits the air, the Dark Side of the Ring episode will be up. This week's episode is going to be the XPW episode, and I was scrolling through Twitter. Kevin Kleinrock had some excitement about it. Someone else pointed out that without XPW, we probably wouldn't have Kevin Kleinrock in the position he is. So that's a big deal. But also, it looks like we're going to have Joey Munoz talking a bit on this episode. There's a direct quote on the Dark Side of the Ring's Twitter section from Joey, where he says, "I wasn't a huge wrestling fan growing up. I was a huge fan of my uncle Supreme, and I just tagged along. He is a godfather of deathmatch wrestling. That is his legacy." And so it looks like they're talking to Joey on this episode as well. And what perfect timing, seeing the Santino brothers are returning to shows right now. So, lots of Lucha Libre history that a lot of people are less aware of will probably pop up in this show. I'm not going to promise we'll get Kevin Kleinrock, but it's possible.
Yeah, lots of interesting faces and names, especially out in the West Coast wrestling scene. So any of you listening out on the West Coast, you absolutely want to make sure you watch this episode. Anyone not on the West Coast, Dusty, you still want to watch this episode.
Yeah, I still really want to see it. There's
you
so
still
much.
want to.
XPW has a crazy story. I mean, we don't have time to get into it, but yeah, like this is going to be good TV. Like, yeah.
Yeah, the trailer really, it's crazy. It's crazy. Just watch the trailer.
We said this all the way back when the season was announced, that this was the one must-watch episode of the season, and it's here. So, I'm gonna figure out how to sail into the deep waters of piracy and watch this episode.
If you figure that out, can you let me know? Because I've been trying, and my ship has not sailed on that. I have not put the flags to post with that.
Well, yes, if I find some way to go into the deep waters, I will let you know. I might even let people know if you ask me very nicely if I find a way on, but you have to ask me quietly.
Or if you all find a way, please let us know.
That too.
Yeah, hit us up as well.
Yeah, and this is
a two-way street.
On social media.
This is because Miranda. Yeah, absolutely. Miranda and I are both kind of unplugged, so we can't just turn on the television and watch it.
Yeah,
and
I only have an antenna. Like a raptor's antenna.
Ditto. Antenna.
And I can't go to a sports bar and actually listen to this one because I always have the volume down. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, make sure you let us know. Make sure you continue to tune in to the Lucha Central Weekly podcast on luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. And with that, we have finished this week's show. Don't forget to follow Lucha Central on social media at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram, and at LuchaCentral.com on Twitter. You can check out the YouTube page with hours upon hours upon hours of exclusive content, like matches and interviews, where you just can't find them anywhere else. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, where can our listeners find you?
I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy, and I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That is the numbers 3, 2, and 1, and then T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, and I'm all over the Twitters.
And me, Miranda Morales, you can find me at the hashtag Miranda, hashtag spelled out, on Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget, if you are listening to this show on your favorite podcast streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Speaker, and much, much more, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe so that way you get notifications every time a new episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast drops. You can leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Let us know what you think about the show, topics that you think we should cover, things that we have covered that you like, you don't like, anything in between. And also you can share with that information with us on social media, of course, at our social media handles. And if you are an independent wrestling promoter, fan, wrestler, anything related to independent wrestling and Lucha Libre, reach out to us. Let us know to be featured on a future edition of the Indie Roundup. We love to cover independent wrestling. Things are picking up very quickly. So if you want to make sure you are featured, send us a link, send us a match, send us, a social media website, whatever that may be, even just results. let us know, and we're happy to include it on a future edition of the Indie Roundup. Thank you all so much for listening. Again, check out our interview with Gino Medina. That will be out now, if it is not, very, very soon. Major League Wrestling star, big independent wrestling star, and really a flag bearer of Lucha Libre. That interview will be up on luchacentral.com, all of the streaming platforms, and our partners at thechairshot.com. For Brendan Barr and Dusty Murphy, this is Miranda Morales. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will be back with you next week.